So has the COVID crisis tested the mettle of your leadership? Today on the Vantage Performance Podcast, I talk to Michael Fingland about what makes leaders resilient so they can see their company through the difficult times to the sunny uplands that apparently await us. Have you got the resilience that's needed? Let's look at the top 10 traits of resilient leaders today. I'm Phil Dobbie, and this is the Vantage Performance Podcast. So, I mean, these are testing times, aren't they, for everyone? So I guess, it's a time like this when real leaders shine, Michael. And you've got a list of things that strong leaders, resilient leaders, do to keep their team together. And I guess that is much more difficult. I mean, I know in Australia, a lot of people are back in the office, but there are still some people working from home. We've all been through that experience as well, where the team is not all in the same place. And that makes it so much more difficult, doesn't it?
It does, Phil, and good morning. I mean, the reason why I want to talk about this topic is, business leaders and their team around the world, they've been sort of frantically trying to protect the business and making sure it survives, and all the focus has been on that. And a lot of the sort of smarter leaders are starting to now turn their minds to, the cultural impacts in the business and how do we maintain resilience, because this is just the first part of the turnaround. We're still in that sort of shock phase. You've actually got the grind out phase to come, and it's those businesses led by, those resilient businesses led by resilient leadership teams are going to be the ones that actually sort of stay the distance, if you like, and that's why we want to sort of start talking about some of these techniques and traits that really effective leaders are using now, and they're starting to sort of turn their mind to this because this is the next big issue they have to deal with.
Now, some of this sounds like common sense, but, sometimes we need to be reminded of common sense, don't we? So, for example, when we're going through difficult times like this, then communicate more so everyone knows what's going on.
Yeah, and it's because people are in the trenches still. And, we all talk about this, you've got to step back out, look from above, which is where the whole Vantage performance word came from. Vantage point was the original name for the business, being able to look down over a situation with clarity and work out what the plan should be and where should we move. So because leaders are still in the trenches in the main, you've got to give them some of these sort of common sense tools to make them realize, it's time to step back. And, number one, that they should be communicating at least twice, if not three times as much as they were going into COVID, with their stakeholders, making sure that they're comfortable, they've got a robust plan that's being managed, they've got, backup plans, backup strategies, so they've done in terms of newsletters, check-ins with their team. We're a big advocate of leaders walking the floor, literally, say in a factory setting, talking to the people on the ground, not just staying in the ivory office. Because that's where you actually get a lot of your insights by talking to people on the ground.
But it does take time as well, doesn't it? If you're saying do it 2 or 3 times more than you were before, I mean, that's a big chunk of your week gone.
But you're not a one-man army. You've got a leadership team, and this is where you can impact. Typically in a turnaround, we'll create a communications team. So that'll have representatives, so a staff consultation team, I should say. So that will comprise of people all the way up the leadership stack, but also have some people on the ground. So they act as the disseminators, if you like, of key messages and back up the chain as well. So it's not just you. You're not the only person who has to do this. You want to empower all of your supervisors, managers, everybody to do their bit and walk the floor more often than not.
And you're saying when you're doing sort of online huddles, you're having team meetings with Zoom, keep the video on, which we haven't done incidentally. We're on Zoom. I mean, I know we haven't done that because I couldn't get my camera to work. But I mean, what's the point? What's the point of that? Just to make sure people aren't still in their PJs.
Well, first of all, daily and weekly huddles. We're huge advocates of that. It's a key part of our turnarounds in our fast track program because it just keeps the rhythm of the business going. It creates that constant communication about issues, solutions, market intel, whatever. But actually, Matt Jesse, one of our directors here, mandated this really early on, which was fantastic, is keep the video on, because when you're, and we've all done it, right? When you're on a video call or a Teams call, but the video's off, people are doing other things. People are doodling, they're dropping off, they're doing emails, and they're not focused. Yeah. So it's one, to make sure people are focused, just like you would be if you're in a boardroom. But secondly, it's important because you can start to pick up on people's facial expressions. So if you're concerned about mental health, cultural issues in the team, you can start to read people's body language. If the camera's off, you've got no chance. Yeah. So it plays a secondary role to help you get insights into how the team is going.
I mean, even beyond that, just in fact, whether you're actually getting your point across well enough or not. If everyone's looking confused, you've got to go at it from a different angle.
If you're in a boardroom, but you're all sat with your backs to each other, I mean, that's what a Teams call is with no video on. You've got no chance of reading body language or seeing if your point's got across.
So, but you mentioned mental health there, and that's an important one as well, isn't it? And so I think one of your points is that resilient leaders do need to take account of all of this.
Well, and they've got to lead from the front. I mean, I actually prefer the word mental strength. I think mental health still has a lot of sort of negative connotations, but and you talk about strength, a lot of leaders sort of gravitate to that more. But just an example here, and we've always done this, but we've just doubled down on it. Providing we have a standing monthly membership. People can go and get a float, go and have a float tank. Yoga classes. We have a masseuse that comes.
A float tank's still a thing. I didn't realize they were big in the 70s. Now. I didn't realize they're still going.
They've come back. They've come back in a big way. So we encourage people to go and use them because we know that before COVID, we've been doing this for years. Because if you've got stronger clarity, you've got it's the foundation of resilience. Whether you do meditation, so we have a meditation coach for those that want to use it. So if you've got a really resilient head, you're going to be able to deal with disruptions. And we did it years ago because we're in a crisis environment. Our clients are either in a turnaround phase or they're growing rapidly, and that's causing their own challenges. So we're better able as leaders to guide our clients to come up with those breakthrough ideas if we've got really clear head and we're resilient. So what we're saying is, and as I said to you before on air, the ABC just released a comment that the cost of mental health due to COVID is going to be $200 million. Sorry, $200 billion, I should say.
You were saying that to me before we started recording. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and I mean, for me, I keep myself sane by cycling. I mean, you're always going to get more out of me if I've just been for a cycle ride because I think my brain is working so much better. So, I mean, exercise and eating well, obviously, are key to all of this as well.
Well, we have a 3-pillar platform here that we talk about and practice here. So, Headspace, we call it Headspace, which is box breathing, meditation, yoga, all those techniques. It's as simple as just taking time out for 10, 20 minutes. Go for a walk in the park. Don't care. Just get out of your head, go for a walk, and it'd be better for it. So Headspace, nutrition, and exercise. The 3 pillars to have a really strong sort of foundation. So again, we encourage people to take time out. We trust our people; they'll get their work done. So I don't care if someone goes for a 2-hour hike in the middle of the day. Fantastic. We actually applaud that because I know that they're going to drop into flow. They're going to drop into the zone that we often talk about, and they're actually going to be more effective, more productive, and happier as a result. So we try and design our environment around that state.
So getting people involved in the strategy as well, getting everyone involved in that. I mean, so in other words, grabbing all those great ideas that are coming out of people lying in float tanks.
Exactly right. I mean, rather than just have your annual strategy day, I mean, you should be having at least quarterly catch-ups and involve more people that don't just have the senior leadership team catch up. You can use, SurveyMonkey or survey methods to get ideas from the floor. Walk the floor, as I said before. That's where you get some really good gems. I mean, when we're developing turnaround plans or strat plans, some of the best ideas come from the cleaner, the guy or the girl on the production line. They have this little gem that says, I know how to actually speed up production or improve quality control. If you don't do it, you're missing out on so much. So involve them in the strategy setting. It brings them closer. They feel more inclusive, and it's going to assist.
Yeah, and you're benefiting from a diversity of thought, which you're incapable of yourself because you've only got your own background, not all their backgrounds, which can contribute to those ideas. So, what about then keeping a track of how the culture of the organisation is developing, and how is morale being held up? Because I mean, so many times in companies, you despair when you see that morale is at an all-time low and the people at the top haven't even noticed.
That's right. So that's where walking the floor comes in, newsletters, all the stuff we've just talked about. But we're a big advocate, and we do this religiously with clients as well, is the Net Promoter Score survey. Use it for customers, but also for staff, particularly to and it's not just, out of 0 to 10, how we're performing. Would you recommend us as a place to work, I should say, and that's 10. That's the first question, and you end up with a score from negative 100 to positive 100. But you asked some of those other critical things that Google worked out years ago is the secret to a high-performance team, and that is psychological safety. Do they feel comfortable talking up in a team environment? That's number one. That was of all the research they did. That was the number one tool. Do they have autonomy? Do they feel like they've got the back of their colleagues? And you ask those 5 questions. If you just Google the Google High Performance metric, you'll find it. But we add that to our NPS survey, and
so you
that's
do
a good
that
way to check in.
Yeah, so you
every
do
quarter,
that
6 months. Okay. I'll be doing it quarterly at the moment, but normally it's every 6 months. But you'd want to be probably doing that quarterly. Just see, it's another read in conjunction with the daily walks and just general feedback from the management team.
Right. So in these uncertain times, stress testing in the business as well, because who knows what the future is going to hold? Who knew what 2020 was going to be like? If you're stress testing your business last year, I'm fairly certain you wouldn't have put this scenario in front.
Yeah, and we've talked about stress testing a lot over the years with you, but every business should have their plan B. And stress testing is really what happens if revenue drops by 10 or 15 or 20%. What would we do? What would be our plan? Just a one-page plan. We would have to do this, and this is what the P&L would look like. This is what the cash flow would look like, and this is what we have to do with our financiers, in a nutshell. So, and in Australia, particularly, and series around the world, there's a lot of sort of government mechanisms that are coming to an end over the next 2-3 months. So you need your plan B right now, which is what your ultimate strategic plan would be based on that stress testing you do. So use this time pre-Christmas to workshop that, model it, get it ready. So again, number one was talking about increased communication to stakeholders. If you can say to your key stakeholders that you've stress tested the business model, you've got plan B and C or even D there in the top drawer ready to go, their level of confidence will either stay high or certainly improve. And you're more likely to get support from them in the new year if you need it.
It's amazing how many companies have, quickly switched to a plan B during all of this, isn't it? In various parts of the world, like companies, for example, that, have had to close but can do deliveries, and they've never done deliveries before in their life, and all of a sudden they turn it on and have managed to, in some cases, maintain their revenue.
And for some, they're not going back to the original business model. Yeah, they're just staying with it because it's more profitable.
So entering safe harbour is another thing. If you are in trouble, we've got this. We've got this provision now. Make use of it.
Well, that's right. And we've talked at length about safe harbour, but the critical thing here is the COVID safe harbour, which goes most of the way to the pre-existing safe harbour in Australia. The COVID safe harbour is definitely finishing on the end of December. So you need to get into the normal safe harbour now if you've got some concerns over the business into the new year. And that's where that stress testing comes in. Because if there's a reasonably good chance, or better than 50-50 chance, that you might cop a reduction to revenue when all these mechanisms come off, because the job seeker or the unemployment benefit payment, that was double for quite a long time, and that just gets spent in the economy. There's a lot of mechanisms that are going to reduce discretionary spending in the community. So if your customer base has been the recipient of a lot of that stuff, you're going to take a hit to revenue. So if that stress testing plan B says, well, we might have a bit of a liquidity issue here, we're a bit worried about consultant trading, you need to get into the normal safe harbour now, because it might take a few weeks to get in because of the work that has to be done because of COVID. And you don't want to be scrambling, the 26th of December, trying to work out whether you're protected or not, because that's just...
Yeah, and that brings up a broader issue of actually just looking ahead, doesn't it? Looking ahead far enough and making sure you're taking all the steps that are necessary to protect yourself and your company. I guess another trait for a resilient leader. We talked about how they also communicate well with their team and look after their team. What about the wider stakeholders, your suppliers and financiers?
Financiers, suppliers, suppliers too, because in Australia, particularly as there has been in the UK and other countries, there's a moratorium on legal action that creditors can take to claim their money. So unless you've been a critical supplier, to a business, as in, if they stop supplying, you can't work. A lot of businesses haven't been getting paid. So unless you've been communicating well, unless you've communicated a plan to them, and again, this has to be done pre-Christmas, because otherwise they're going to start issuing stat demands in January. And we know that there are a lot of lawyers around the country who have got clients getting stat demands ready. So there's going to be a huge rush in January. So communication to suppliers, creditors more generally, financiers, is going to be critical to maintain that stable platform.
So the final one, in these times when you've got so much to do to try and guide your business through these very difficult circumstances and keep your team together and keep your suppliers and financiers happy, and you're doing more of everything, it sounds like, how you're finding time for yourself in amongst all of that, I could see would be very difficult, and could be one thing that could easily let slip.
Well, this is number 10 on the list, but really it's number 1. But leaders, being who they are in the main, they are very selfless and look after everybody else first. And that is that, and it's the most critical one of all. It's taking time out for yourself. So if you're not looking after your own mental strength, as we talked about before, then there's no way you can have a resilient business or a resilient team, because you're leading from the front. So they say you see you stressed and you're not managing with the stress of the situation. That flows. It flows down the line, and so you've got to take time out for yourself so you can think clearly, see clearly, and have a sort of stronger fortitude so you could ride the bumps. And if they know that you're doing a whole bunch of things to improve your mental strength, then you're giving them permission to do the same. And that's often what's required is, and say to your team, as I said before, go for a 2-hour hike, go for a 2-hour cycle during the day. Don't care. That's fantastic. Applaud that, because you as a business, you're going to be better off. It's different to someone just going shopping for 2 hours, right? That's different. But if they're doing something around those 3 pillars that I mentioned before, fantastic. You should be applauding that, but you got to lead from the front.
Yeah. More time in the float tank with yourself.
Absolutely.
You can see I'm obsessed with float tanks now. I need to find a float tank now.
I've been doing it for years, and you'll be even more amazed. I've just bought one. So it arrives. I can do it more than just once a week or 2 weeks. I've actually bought one, and so I can do it more often. They really work. They're fantastic. They're not for everybody, but if
there's a real cool echoey sound next time we're talking to you, we know you're still in the float tank. That's been very useful. And a final question about all of this then. Do you think a lot of business leaders have surprised themselves over the last year, that they have that resilience, and because it seems like a lot of people have shown a great ability to adapt, and they may have surprised themselves through all of this?
Absolutely, and they've been they've been thrust into a turnaround situation, a crisis situation, where they've come up with really innovative business models. And my wife just bought me a present for my birthday, and it was a company that was producing a furniture business in Victoria, I think it is. Totally something unrelated, and they switched to making modular pieces of furniture, so the equipment would stay utilised, and it's actually a fantastic product, and maybe that's what they'll do forever. It was showcased on ABC a few months ago, but so businesses have just been forced into it and forced to come up with new ways and more innovative ways to stay in business, and they're the ultimate resilient businesses.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, great to talk again, Michael, and we'll catch you again very soon.
Cheers, Phil.
And that is the Vantage Performance Podcast. We will try and squeeze another one in if we can before Christmas. I'm Phil Dobbie. Catch you again very soon. Thanks for listening.